Sophia loved dolls. Her shop, Sophia's Dolls and Dreams, overflowed with them. Porcelain dolls with painted smiles, rag dolls with button eyes, antique dolls with velvet dresses. Sophia cherished them all. She dusted their faces each morning. She carefully rearranged their tiny shoes. Sophia felt happiest surrounded by her dolls. One chilly afternoon, a customer arrived, an old woman. She clutched a doll wrapped in a faded shawl. The old woman shuffled inside, her eyes darting around. "I have a doll," she rasped, her voice like dry leaves. "A special doll, looking for a new home." Sophia, always eager for new additions, welcomed her in. The old woman's words seemed to hang in the air. "Be careful," she warned, her voice a low hiss. "This one, she's different. She doesn't like to be ignored." Sophia took the doll, unwrapping the shawl carefully. It was breathtaking, a bisque doll with rosy cheeks and bright blue eyes. Her dress, a deep crimson velvet, seemed to shimmer, but something felt off. The doll's gaze was unsettling, almost knowing. "She's beautiful," Sophia breathed, captivated. The old woman chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. "Yes, she is, but beauty, it can be deceiving." The old woman left without another word. Sophia placed the doll on a shelf right in the center. The shop felt different somehow, colder. The air grew still. Even the dolls seemed to stare at the newcomer. Sophia shook off the feeling. It was just an old woman's ramblings, she told herself. There was no need to be afraid. That night, the nightmares began. Sophia dreamt of the doll. Its blue eyes glowed red in the darkness. A high-pitched giggle echoed in her ears. She woke with a gasp, heart pounding. She glanced at the shop below. Moonlight spilled through the windows, illuminating the doll in the center. Its head seemed to be turned, looking towards her. Sophia shivered, pulling the covers tight. It was just a dream, she thought, trying to calm her racing heart. Nothing more. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. The next morning, Sophia rushed downstairs. She needed to convince herself it was just a nightmare, but the shop, it felt different, colder. And there was a faint scent in the air, something sweet and sickly, like rotting flowers. Days turned into a sleepless blur. Every night the nightmares returned. The doll's laughter echoed in Sophia's dreams. Every morning the shop felt colder. The scent of decay grew stronger. Sophia started hearing whispers when she was alone in the shop. Faint whispers just at the edge of hearing. She found objects moved. Dolls, carefully arranged, were scattered on the floor. The music box on the counter played on its own, a haunting lullaby filling the silent shop. Sophia tried to rationalize it. Drafts, she told herself, rats anything but the doll. But the truth was undeniable. The doll was changing. Its blue eyes seemed brighter, more intense, and its smile, it seemed wider, almost predatory. Sophia couldn't escape the feeling that the doll was watching her, studying her, waiting. Panic started to set in. Sophia couldn't sleep, couldn't think. The whispers followed her everywhere. She tried to remove the doll from the shop. She carried it outside, her hands shaking. But the moment she crossed the threshold, a wave of dizziness washed over her. Nausea gripped her. She stumbled back, dropping the doll onto the welcome mat. Quickly she retreated back inside. It was like an invisible barrier surrounded the shop, a barrier she couldn't cross. Sophia was trapped with the doll. Nightmares turned into waking visions. Sophia saw the doll blink. Its lips moved, forming silent words. The whispers grew louder, turning into distinct voices, chanting her name. "Sophia! Sophia! You can't hide from us!" Desperate measures. Sophia tried everything to break the curse. She tried to destroy the doll, but each attempt was met with an unseen force. The hammer she brought down stopped in mid-air. The knife she held clattered to the floor, her hand suddenly numb. She tried to give the doll away, but no one wanted to even touch it. They recoiled from its gaze, their faces etched with sudden fear. Days turned into weeks, each one more terrifying than the last. The shop was freezing now, the air thick with the stench of decay. Cobwebs hung from every corner and shadows danced on the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. The other dolls in the shop, once a source of comfort, now seemed to mock her. Their painted smiles seemed cruel, their eyes filled with knowing malice. The final night. One stormy night, the whispering stopped. The shop was eerily silent. Sophia stood in the center, her eyes fixed on the doll. Its blue eyes blazed like miniature suns. A cold wind whipped through the shop, tearing at Sophia's clothes. She felt a presence behind her. Turning slowly, she saw them. Dozens of children, their faces pale and gaunt, stood in the shadows. Their eyes, hollow and black, stared at her with an unnerving intensity. They reached for her, their icy fingers brushing against her skin. Sophia screamed, but the sound died in her throat. The doll on the shelf giggled, the sound high and piercing. "You're ours now, Sophia," it whispered, its voice no longer childlike, but ancient and full of malice. "Join us, play with us forever." Vanished without a trace. The next morning the storm subsided. Sunlight streamed through the shop windows, but something was different. The shop was empty. The shelves were bare. The dolls, all of them, were gone. Only a single object remained on the dusty floor. A faded shawl lying open as if someone had just stepped out of it. The townspeople whispered about Sophia's disappearance. Some said she had run off, unable to bear the weight of her loneliness. Others spoke of the old woman and the doll, their voices hushed and fearful. No one dared to enter the shop. The door remained locked, the windows boarded up. Sophia's dolls and dreams became a silent monument to a terrifying truth. The curse continues. Years passed, the shop remained empty, a constant reminder of the darkness that had once resided there. But then, one day, the impossible happened. The shop door creaked open. A figure emerged from the shadows, an old woman clutching a doll wrapped in a faded shawl. She smiled, a chillingly familiar smile, and looked up at the shop sign. "Sophia's Dolls and Dreams," she read aloud, her voice a dry rasp. "Such a lovely name. It's time for a new dream to begin." With that, she disappeared into the shop, closing the door softly behind her. The doll in her arms giggled, the sound echoing in the empty street. The curse, it seemed, had found a new home.